lines from the bottom on page Yud Gimel. We are discussing the process of creation. And what we need to bear in mind, that even though the creation is yesh me'ayin, but this yesh is not totally devoid of cognizance and recognition of a lakus, which is not a yesh. Altogether, the whole phenomenon of creation is contained in a lakus, not in words. Not in yesh. Therefore, there has to be a means by which the lakus aspect is brought down to a worldly level, and that is via the offices of Chochmah. Chochmah has both qualities. It relates to Ein Sof, but at the same time, it's a keli for Ein Sof. As we discussed yesterday, the principle of a keli means that it relates to every aspect therein, not just the Ein Sof in its own abode, but every aspect that is contained within the Ein Sof. This is the union of kelim, and this is the principle of Chochmah. And we're struggling with this idea. I was thinking that one way of which is not different than what we said before, but still it is more tangible, that we can relate to this principle, is simply in a home, in a room. When we said many times, and when you are inside the room, it's a completely different sense than when you are observing it from outside. When you're observing it from outside, you're observing all the content of the room. When you're inside the room, there's a dual experience. On the one hand, there are all the furnishings, everything that's contained in the room. On the other hand, there's a sense that all of these things that are contained therein are actually representative of the room itself. They're not separate entities. You don't sense that the table was brought here and the chair was brought here and so forth. It's part of the room. Part of the same reality of that everything is encompassed in. This is the principle of Chochmah, that it can relate to Ein Sof. At the same time, there is a Oir Panimi. There is an identifiable element that comes from Chochmah. Okay, so we have 3 lines on the bottom. The line begins with the word be-bechinat pnimi. Be-bechinat pnimi, we discussed it, and again I said many things that one has to reflect on his own to begin to relate to the concept. We always explain the word be-bechinat. Bechina means it's an aspect. What is the meaning of an aspect in contrast to an entity? An entity is a standalone entity. An aspect is camouflaged, is contained within the total reality, but there is that aspect in it. In our terminology, it's like when a person observes a whole panorama, it's one glance, but there's the aspect of detail in that glance. although it is contained within that glance. This is the Bechinas Pnimi. And the Bechinas Pnimi, Zehu Bechinas HaGilui. This is the aspect of Gilui. What does the word Gilui mean? Expression, revelation. Means that the oil is not just there by it being a presence, but it's in full revelation, in full expression. Everything that's contained therein is expressed. This is Bechinas Hagilui. Again, let's go back to our Moshel. I hope we think about this. When we observe a whole panorama, and we recognize that this panorama, what we are observing is not just one reality, but one reality that encompasses an entire expression. But everything that is contained in that view, although there are many, many things, and each one is a reality unto itself, but this is not the vantage point from which you're observing it. You're observing it as being part of the whole. If you observe each entity unto itself, for example, you're walking down the street and you're looking for a certain street. When you come and identify the street, you're not identifying the street as part of the whole view. You're identifying this particular street because this is where you need to go. But when you're not looking for a specific street, you're just observing the contours of the city, you're also recognizing all the different streets, all the different turnovers. But these turnovers are contained a part of the overall plan of the city. This is the Bechinas Hagilui. Every city has a plan. And the plan is a plan for the city, not for this particular street. This plan is taking the entire city and expressing itself in an oil panimi, in a livable and a usable manner. You live on the street, you still remain living in that same city. You're not just in the street and no longer have any connection to the overall environment. This street is part of the city. And this is why you're living in the street, because this is part of the city. But this is the gilui of what a city is.
And what is the Bechina?
The Bechina is contained within the total reality. But there is an identifiable element there, not an isolated element. A city has to have streets.
Isolated would be what?
Isolated would be just one street.
I know, but in our terminology.
This goes even further. You have your home, and your home is on the street. You live in your home. And that is really your abode, and this is where you that provides for your life, and this is what you occupy. This is your mitzvahs. But every human being, yes, you live in your home, but your home is part of a street and part of a neighborhood and part of a city and part of a country, and you wouldn't want it to be any other way. The fact that this is your home from the perspective of the entire city, the entire reality, it's called bechina. Okay, I'm living in this city, but I can identify a certain aspect of it that to which I have identified my relationship to. But I'm not stepping out of the city. This type of view to be able to take in the entire reality and at the same time allow for all that is contained therein, this is the nature, this is a very unique quality of Chochmah.
Again, this unique quality is to take in the particulars and see the overall view at the same time.
Right. Or better still, see the particulars from the point of view of the overall, of the reality. Chochmah is not focused on one particular, but it's revealing that particular. Bina is where the focus is on a particular, and then you correlate it to the whole. Chochmah is the opposite. It takes the whole and brings out the oil of the whole into the particulars. From a Bina perspective, this we can all very, very well relate. What kind of house do you have? Oh, it's a beautiful house, a 3-story house with 5 bedrooms and so forth. That is from the Bina perspective. And from Chochmah perspective, it's a house straight in the center of life, in the center of the city. It's a completely different view, although surely it has to accommodate your living and all your needs. Everybody knows that if you want to just go outside of the main human occupation, you can buy a house for a fraction of the cost of a house in the inhabited area. But then you don't have anything but your house. Okay, so let's continue on that same line. Oy pnimi zehu b'chinas gilui. This is the aspect of gilui. And we use the word gilui as we already now digested it very clearly. Zehu b'chinas gilui. This is the aspect of gilui, not the aspect of a different presence, of many entities that are present therein. The many streets in the city and many houses in the street, this is the gilui of the city. This is not what the city consists in. The city provides for them. That is, from that perspective, this is gilui. Chochmah recognizes things from that vantage. Reish is Gilui HaKav. And the starting point of the Gilui HaKav, of the revelation of the Kav. Kav, as we said yesterday, Kav means the multi-pointed line. It starts from Ayin Sof, and then it draws down point by point all the way down into the lowest world. That's called Kav. Because the Kav comes through a tzimtzum. Ayin Sof does not come in the form of multi-points. The kav is where there's, this is the reshus gila kav, the element of points and ultimately in the world into pnimi. This is where it comes from. The beginning of gilui hakav. Liyos bechinas hagilui bo'in lamois, to provide the union of gilui in world, on the worldly level. Hu b'chochmah. The beginning is in Chochmah. This is what the Pasuk said, as we learned yesterday. Havaya konon yereshes darkoi. Shehi hakeili klolis, which is the Chochmah, is a keili klolis, is an all-encompassing keili. Lakabe b'toicho, to accept into it. I'm sorry. Lakabe b'toicho, to be able to accept into the Chochmah. Bechinas hagilu di oire soy boru. Excuse me. Chochmah is a keli. A keli has to have specific definition. What is the keli about? And here we have a definition of keli of a different ilk completely. Chochmah is a keli, but it's not a keli of any specific quality, and it's not a keli that is definable for a specific function. You're with me, right? Because we discussed many times. You put water in a cup, then the water is in a keli. When the water is in a basin or in a lake, it's not in a keli. There's no specificity. You're not revealing any particular function of water. Water is water. So therefore, keli has to have some kind of a definition. That's what the word keli means. Chochmah is a unique kind of a keli. It's also a keli, but it's a keli that is capable of accepting bechinas hagilui, the gilui aspect of Ayin soy boru. I'm emphasizing gilui aspect. In other words, Chochmah does not accept Ayin soy per se. Ayin soy per se is above world and above Chochmah. But the gilui of Ayin soy, this is where Chochmah comes in, and that Chochmah is able to accept this and then provide it for the rest of the whole structure. What does Gilui mean, as we already discussed? Gilui means this entire Ayin Sof is expressing, revealing itself with all that it contains. Gilui. So Chochmah relates to that which it contains, but from the Ayin Sof perspective. Like we said, the city plans and all the street and all the entire skyline of the city consists of many pieces, of many things. But what you were observing, what it all represents is the city, not the pieces. The pieces is the gilui of what the city is. But the city was first established, was first conceptualized. Therein already was contained all of its further development. And then at the end of the second line, from the V'alidei HaChochmah, and then via the Chochmah, Nimshach HaGilui. This is the entire, which means that when it comes from Chochmah into Bina, Bina is closely related. Bina is also Seichel and also is able to conceptualize and realize the overall reality, but it gets it from Chochmah, which means it takes all the content, the Gilui, as Chochmah provides it. So this Gilui and it's the important Ayin is the emphasis of Gilui. Again, Gilui in contrast to a Metzias. A Metzias is a standalone Metzias. A house is a house. But a Gilui means how the house is, Megala is revealing the bigger reality. Which means Gilui. As a result of Chochmah, this Gilui is brought in the entire Atzilus, starting from Bina on down. V'gam bo'olam is biyah, and then further, even in olam is biyah, even in worlds that are completely outside of the Atzilus, that do not have the oir ho'eliki directly per se. But even there is the hamshocha of this gilui. Gam bo'olam is biyah. The principle of the gam bo'olam is biyah. This is a completely different level. This is a real mitzias of the world. In our moshel that we're discussing right now, if we would try to focus in and understand the difference between a plan, a city, a street, a neighborhood and a street, and then the individual home. The individual home, when you're in the home, you're not even aware that you are in a certain neighborhood and a certain street. Nonetheless, this oir of Chochmah is nimshach and illuminates your home also. This entity that is almost devoid of oir. It's a metzias. And fact is, you want to buy a house, it makes an enormous difference where the house is situated. Doesn't take any more money to build a house in the middle of Crown Heights or to build it on the outskirts of the city. And yet, there's no comparison in the cost of the house. Because there is the overall oir of the area that where the house becomes a gilui of the total reality, rather than a metzias by itself. And ba'olam is biyah. We could say that ba'olam is biyah in our moshel, a private dwelling is like biyah. A metzias unto itself. We have streets in the kind of city plan. Yeah, it's an individual street, But if you are a resident in this city, you're permitted to go in any street. You don't have to ask permission. But when it comes to a home, this already becomes secluded. It's a different owner.
The point there is that you may think it's sort of its own entity, but still, even though it has its own owner, it is part of the.
That's right.
overall-
That's the oyer ha'atzilus is nimshach im biyah.
Ah. Ah.
וגם באמס ביה, במלאכים ונשומס. The malachim and neshamis, who are the dwellers in this biyah. Sheyeh bahem hasaga lekis. That by them also there should be hasaga lekis, even while they are in biyah, they should be able to be masig, comprehend and recognize the din of Elokus. Elokus is totally beyond, outside, beyond this structure that we're discussing right now. Let's step in here for a moment. The street is in a city, is in a neighborhood. The neighborhood is in a city. The city is in a state. The city is in a country. The country is on a continent. Which is totally unrelated to the developed dwelling element. Preceded the whole thing. It's a completely different reality. Doesn't belong to anyone. Nobody can claim it. Even as the Spanish and the Portuguese and the British are crossing the ocean and claiming areas in the New World, but they don't claim the world. Claim areas in the world. The world cannot be claimed. So this inyan, Elokus itself, which is beyond claim, this can be revealed and recognized in AyinBase biyah by malachim and neshamis. V'gam, and even the neshamis yoru lamata, even into neshamis that came down here below. Mislavish and aguf, sheyeh dimamasiyim Elokus, that they too know. Not only know, but they actually comprehend and relate to Elokus. The Choshakol Zeh, but this entire panorama, who b'shoyresh shorshoy, at the very top root of this, the root of roots, that provides for this type of a relationship, this type of a condition, and the root of roots is me-bechinas Chochmah d'Atzilus. Is from the aspect of Chochmah d'Atzilus.
What's the stress? Bechinat Chochmah rather than Chochmah.
The koyach ha-chochmah as such is not a mitzvah. Like we say, I touch something. I have a koyach, I have a touch. I have my hand. I have the facility of feeling in my hand a touch. This is when I see things. This is not via personal experience. This is bechinat riyah. You could see things without even experiencing them, without even paying attention to it, without remembering that you saw it. Have no recollection of it whatsoever, because you didn't experience it. But you saw it. Because the koyach ha-chochmah, and a sight is a very proper illustration of it. It takes from your nefesh only a bechina, only a very subtle experience. It doesn't grasp your full experience, your full person. This is why Chochmah is such an elusive thing. In order to relate to Chochmah, you have to have an aspect of beetle. And the tendency by human beings in our world is to say, no. I need something concrete. What can I hold on to? We always say, I mentioned it many times, I frequent the Prospect Park. It's a pretty rich area from the natural perspective and so forth. If you allow yourself to see it from that vantage. But I'm observing, people are not satisfied with that. They need something concrete. What kind of flower is this? What kind of tree is this? What kind of you miss the message from a higher reality. Because the world really maintains, the mentality of the world is that each flower makes itself. Each tree makes itself. It's not true at all. Everything has its roots in the command on Mebashin Tachi Horas Dasha. This is aspect. Aspect of Chochmah. Chochmah is an aspect. It's not a mitzvah. Chochmah is a beetle. It's not a mitzvah. So let's see if we can finish the ois. How much more time do I have? I have no time. No, that's it. Okay, have a great day. Good chodesh with you.
Anything else over there?
Beginner's